Well, you know the bridge, over the Millbrook.
Yes, down Bridge Street.
Yes, that coming up from Weald,
Yes.
the very first house over the bridge on the left-hand
Yes.
side before the pub.
Yes.
Mrs. Rogers lived there, and she had a sweet shop.
Right.
So that's one.
Did it have jars of humbugs? And
Yes, all
things?
sorts of things. It was in the room of her house,
Yes.
but she had it there, and she was open on Sundays as well if anybody wanted sweets then. And then Bishops, where the Bishops are now.
That's
There
Emmy's.
Yeah. There were two old ladies lived there, the Sparrots, Miss Miranda and Miss Teresa, and they were always called Miss Miranda and Miss Teresa. And they had a shop of sorts, but it was not like it is now. It wasn't a paper shop. They sold a few sweets, sugar, tea, cocoa, that sort of thing.
Basic groceries.
Paraffin, candles, lamps, all that sort of thing in there.
Yeah.
And the house opposite, next to the chapel,
Yes.
that was a Mr. Wells paper shop.
Is that Pear Tree House? That one, the old house next to the
Yes, it's
chapel?
got the pear shop.
Yes.
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 That was Mr. Wells' paper shop, and his children had to get up early in the morning to deliver the papers before they went to school. He didn't pay anyone. It later became a butcher's shop.
Oh, yes.
And then where the post office is now, which was a pub, there was a lady lived there, and I can't remember her name for the life of me. I can see her face. And there was the door, you went straight down the passage, and there were rooms either side. And at the bottom was a kitchen with a huge black cooker. And she used to do fish and chips, but she did them as you went in, with great big frying pans. And you went in and you just waited while she fried fish and chips for you.
I bet it was good.
It was good, yeah. My mother used to send me there. And then, you know, Eagle House, where Mrs. Martin had the Roman Catholic church at the top for the children from school. They would go at scripture lessons. They would go off to Mrs. Martin, to her Roman Catholic bit, and come back after we'd...
Now, Mr. Martin was the landlord of the pub, wasn't he?
Yes.
The Eagle pub, yes.
They had a sweet shop.
Did they?
In the window there was a sweet shop. And then, of course, Mr. Money, you know, who made shoes. Before Mr. Money, in my time, was a man called Mr. Sufflin. And he made shoes for people.
In the same shop,
Same
the same
shop,
place.
yes.
Now that's in Bridge Street, isn't it?
Yes, one of my uncles was apprenticed to him, one of my father's brothers.
Yeah.
And then Arthur Hill's shop, that was Kimber's Butchers, and they owned the pub as well. You know, the Horseshoe. And Mr. Kimber had the butcher shop.
When did it stop being a butcher shop? Do you remember?
When Arthur took it over, I think.
And when
I think it was empty for quite a long time before Arthur took it over.
So was that in the 50s, do you think?
I can't remember, it must have been.
Yeah.
You know where our butcher's shop is now?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it wasn't. It was just a great tall wall there, covering the back for the Dutton shop. But the cottage where Mary Farmer used to live, between that and the shop, and Miss Penfold had that, and that was a homemade cake shop. Her parents lived in Broad Street, where Marion Goldring lives now. Her parents lived there, Captain and Mrs. Penfold. And this lady had Mary's house, and she had all the homemade cakes in the windows.
Lovely.
Mm.
Yeah.
Despite having the bakery there, she still did well with her homemade cakes. Then, of course, there were Dutton's shop, which was when you went in there, you could smell the coffee. They used to grind the coffee for you and cut the bacon with a knife. You know, it was a lovely shop.
That was a real old-fashioned grocery shop, wasn't
And the other side was chemist. This side was grocery, and that side was chemist.
Ah, don't remember the chemist. Yeah.
And those great big bottles with coloured liquids in the window, that side. And then the Romany, that was another shop that supplied all the gentry. That was Thompson's, Mrs. Thompson. She left that to Fred Tongue, if you remember. And then Constables and Bakers.
As a sort of grocers again?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
High-class grocers.
High-class grocers, okay, yes. Right, right.
I mean, the normal, ordinary folk didn't go there, it was too expensive. Constables and Bakers, which, you know, we had our own bakers.
That's where the Chinese shop is now, yes.
And you know the house next to it, not the little cottage bit, because that was part of the bakers, but the next one, where Mrs. Owens used to live, that was the gas showrooms.
Oh, was it?
Where we had
cookers,
Mr. Quick lived there, the old Mr. Quick. Cookers and lights, and you bought your gas mantles there, you know, and any gas repairs you needed doing was there. And then the next one was the bank.
Okay. Is that where the Poachers is? Or
yes, the Poachers, that was the bank. Then Mr. Simmons' shop, and on the side of that was the butcher's shop again, wasn't it? Opposite there, where the flats now are, was the pub called the Lamb, with railings round it and a big tree. It was never called the Lamb by the locals, it was always called the Tree. And on there was at the end bit that had been Mr. Hughes' butcher's shop, which eventually became a fish and chip shop. Do you remember? Do you remember?
So this is, no, I can remember the Lamb.
Yeah,
So
well,
this is about at least we've got 4 butcher's shops, which is amazing.
that's it. Oh,
Yeah.
there's another one to come, yeah?
Now, with the
Another
Right.
2 actually. As you go on down Cheapside, you know where Cheapside is?
Yeah.
Those tall houses just on the left, past Mignonette. Well, the end bit that used to be Hughes' shop. You remember Mrs. Hughes? Well, that was something omnivorous. Call it. He had it. It was a jeweller shop. The window that side had all the silver stuff in it, and the one this side had all the rings and the watches. And I can remember we used to go to, I'd like that one and I'd like that one when we were children, you know. And he also had a garage working at the back.
Yes.
Oliver Omnivorous Collett, that was his name. And then going across, going round the corner from the Tree, the Lamb.
Yeah.
Where the solicitor's office is now, that was Mr. Brown's grocery shop. Winnie Brown, you remember Winnie Brown? Her father and mother had that, and she worked in the butcher's shop, which was Temple's.
Right, yes.
Yeah, but that was a butcher shop. That was Mr. Gill's butcher shop.
Okay.
And then it became a laundrette.
Yes.
And then I suppose it was the heart of John.
John
Henry,
Temple's shop,
didn't he?
yes.
And there was Eels then in between
Yes.
that. Oh, and
Another grocery shop.
where the
Yes,
estate agent.
Yes.
that was a garage, and
Yeah.
before that it was a Mrs. Hutchins and her 2 daughters had a really nice draper shop. And I can remember they had like a wooden stand which was round at the top, and they had these you remember when gore skirts came out? They used to be fixed onto there, and these gore skirts all around on the stands. And then after Mrs. Hutchins went, it was the central garage. The malt shovel,
Yes.
Mrs. Kent had that. They had lots of pigs, they bred pigs there, and she used to sell their own bacon and ham. She also sold sweets and pickles and homemade mostly, and lard. She used to make lard from the pig fat, you know, and sell lard. So that was another little shop.
It's fantastic.
And vinegar. I remember going there for vinegar. No,
Did she make the vinegar?
no, she didn't make
She didn't
vinegar.
make it,
She
yeah.
sold. She
Yeah.
sold it in. She had it in a barrel. You
Yeah.
took your bottle
Uh-huh.
and she filled it up from the barrel.
Right.
And she used to make her own sausages too, from her own meat. She'd sell sausages. Mr. Chandler, the saddler.
Yes, remember him. He's
Um,
on the right-hand side.
and then
down.
you know the pub that's closed there in the centre. What's it called? The Jubilee.
Yes.
Well, they had a piece built on now to make it into a kitchen or something, haven't they? Well, that bit there was a garage, and a man called Colin Townsend had that as a bicycle shop. He did all bicycle repairs, and he had two petrol pumps outside that you had to wind the handle, you know, for petrol. And then, of course, the Dutton family, and then Mrs. Clark's greengrocery next to that, where Susie lives now.
Number 4 townhouse.
That's it, yes. Susie Robinson lives there now, yes. And then over the road where the fish shop is, that's now for sale, that was Mr. Clark's shoe mending shop. And then after that it became the fish shop.
Yes.
And of course the post office I missed out in between,
Yes.
which was a tall
Mrs.
house.
Reynolds, I
Yeah,
remember,
yes.
yes. That's what's like Wheelgate House, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
Then Busby's, which had the department store, that was.
Is that on the left-hand side?
Yes.
Isn't it? Yes.
There was the dress department, then you went through and down some steps, and that was the shoe department. And then you went down to the bottom end, and that was the gents' outfitters.
Is that what's called Strawberry Cottage now?
Yes,
Right.
that was the gents' outfitters there. That was the gents' outfitters there. And then where the other little shop, on the corner, what's her name?
On the corner
Farmer.
of Bushy Road?
Yes,
Yes.
that was the furniture department. And
All
then
of Busby's?
yes, and then they lived in the house flat above it. And then Mrs. Stroud Hardware, do you remember that?
Yes, I do. That was on the opposite side.
Opposite side, but
Yes.
before that it was one of the Miss Duttons had it as, she lived there, and she had it as a school for young ladies. You know, the tradespeople's daughters and people who were a bit better off.
Yes.
Just for girls. That was a girls' school.
That's very small as a school, isn't it?
But it was, she used the upstairs rooms apparently for the school. And then next to the pub,
Which pub? The Morris Clown?
New Inn it was then,
Yes.
yes. The first cottage, a man called Mr. Blunt lived. And he didn't have a shop, but he had a bicycle with a big basket on, and he used to go around the villages selling haberdashery.
Like an old-fashioned peddler.
Mm. So did Mr. Hill, Arthur Hill's father.
Did you?
Mm.
Yes.
And then down the Aston Road, you know the new houses that have been built? You know the bungalow next to it, where Mary lives? Well, that was a house. And downstairs was a butcher shop. The window was on the outside of the road. That end now, that was the window. And at the side of it there were some stone steps and a little door. And the butcher was called Mr. Webb, and Mrs. Webb had a second-hand clothes shop in the top there. And I can remember that.
Do you
We've lost a lot.
remember Mrs. Court? She also had a shop next
Oh,
door.
she did. I'd forgotten.
Yeah.
That was a very short time though, wasn't it? She had that. She sold wool and stuff, didn't
Yes.
she? Yes.
Where was that?
That was next door to Bovington's.
It is remarkable that the village, it was much smaller, half the size,
And self-sufficient, practically.
practically self-sufficient, and all this choice.
Yes.
That's wonderful.
The Elephant and Castle,
Yeah, down Bridge Street.
the Wheat Sheaf,
Yes, where the post office is.
the Eagle,
Yes, Churchview,
Horseshoe,
where it is now.
Talbot,
Yeah,
the Lamb,
it's in the centre.
Malt Shovel, New Inn,
Morris Clown. Yeah.
the Swan. Those are the ones I can remember.
That's, Swans on the Buckland Road.
Mhm.
Yes.
There was where Mr. Day lives in Broad Street. That was a pub.
That was the Plough, I think.
Yeah, and Prospect Place. You know, Prospect, the cottages at the back of the tall house.
Mm.
Not the one where Dr. McCartan lived, but the others. My uncle lived in one of those, and they still had the settle seats along with the fireplace, you know, when they lived in there. But I don't know what the name of that one was. I remember 11 and know of the other two.
Yes.